right into Skinamarink, though. I mean,
Yeah.
how does something like this just come to you? You know, is it an email? Is it a friend you know? How does that work?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a couple of friends that I knew. So it was really actually the connections that I made at the Gateway, with the U of A's student newspaper, which I was at for my entire university time.
For sure.
And yeah, so I knew the executive producer, Edmund Rotea. I've known him since like 2005 when I started at the Gateway. And then I also knew Andy Gertz, who I had been I had actually the first movie that I was a producer on was his movie, which is called The Line. He made a documentary a few years back called The Line, which is about the Edmonton Waste Management Center. Really great documentary. You can see that on YouTube for free. Um, and actually there's definitely some overlap between people who worked on The Line or were part of that, and Skinamarink, kind of within the Edmonton film community. So it was like summer 2021, and I found out. I don't remember exactly how I found out, but it was through some combination of them posting it online or just
Right.
mentioning it, that one of their friends was trying to make his feature length horror film debut. And I didn't know Kyle at all before this. So just for anyone who doesn't is
Right.
learning about this for the first time. So Kyle Edward Ball, who's the creator, writer, editor of Skinamarink. I didn't know him before this. He was a friend of Edmund and Andy's, and kind of within the Edmund, just a number of connections within the Edmonton film community. And so they posted that he was crowdfunding for his feature length film, and he'd been making YouTube horror shorts for a long time, that are called Bite Size Nightmares. So for anyone, you can still check out his Bite Size Nightmares page. And there's dozens of Bite Size Nightmares that he made. So what he would do for that would he would solicit people to, even in YouTube comments, to mention nightmares that they'd had,
Oh, nice.
and then he would make a short film of it. And you can really see when you go back and watch them, kind of the genesis of what became Skinamarink, like even a lot of the similar techniques that are used. And then he also made a short film called Heck, which you can also
Yeah.
see on his YouTube page, which is 30 minutes, and it's kind of like a prototype for Skinamarink, both like stylistically and thematically. It shares a lot of the same genes. Yeah, so I saw the crowdfund page, and I saw the premise for the film. And so just to say the premise for the film quickly. So the premise is that two children wake up in the middle of the night to find out that their parents, particularly their father, is missing, and all the doors and windows in their house have disappeared. And so, like kids in a certain generation, they would kind of cuddle around the TV with their toys and their blankets, for comfort, and then they slowly realize that they're not the only they're not the only people or things in this in this house.
Yeah.
So and so that premise actually comes from, kind of originated with Bite Size Nightmares, because when he was getting the nightmares, Kyle noticed that this was one of the most commonly mentioned nightmares that people would say.
Yeah.
So he wanted to explore that, as his feature debut. So when I saw the premise, and I saw that he had a demo reel on the crowdfunder page, which is still up if anybody wants to go check it out, like on Seed and Spark,
Right.
which also he mentions, he always praises, as a crowdfunding site for specifically for filmmakers. He always praises them a lot as having done a lot for him as as like a local independent filmmaker. So a shout out for Seed and Spark. So I saw the premise and I saw his demo reel, and something intuitively for me was like, I think this is going to be great.
Yeah.
And so, people ask me now, how did you become an associate producer? And this was really this was such a local production. I'm like, really, it was a matter of the little, on the crowdfunder, you get the little perks.
Yep.
and associate producer and executive producer was one of them, and so I was like, okay, I'll do associate producer, and it was like you get your name in the credits and you get like a VHS of the film once it's
Holy
done.
shit. A
Yeah.
VHS.
And yeah, exactly, a VHS. And I mean, it is very much that type of film. That it's being called found footage, but it's not really found footage. Like I kind of see it more as like cursed videotape. So
Sure.
I
Yeah.
so I think it's very fitting that you get the VHS. So that was really it. And then I met Kyle first when I supported it. He reached out and was like, "Thank you so much for supporting my movie," as someone who didn't know him. And so that was when we first kind of talked online. And yeah, very like humble, kind person. Who really had like his a very specific vision of what he wanted for this film.
Right.
And so then, other than that, I like this, from that, I didn't have anything to do with the production and the shooting. I was just following it online when
Right.
they were posting photos to Facebook. And so that was kind of in through summer and beginning of fall. Well, they shot it in summer 2021, and then he was editing it for a few months. And
Right.
then I got a little bit more involved in November 2021 when he reached out completely unexpectedly, and he asked if I could give feedback on the film.
Oh,
And the
nice.
reason that he wanted feedback from me specifically was because I was the only person on the crew, and I'm quick to say this, that like at that I didn't consider myself to be on the crew at all
Right.
at that point. But that was the only person on the crew who was a named producer on the film who hadn't read the shooting script.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Okay.
and
Gotcha.
so yeah, and it actually and the script there is a 96-page script for the film originally, which I think people are sometimes shocked by
I
because
am. I am totally. Yeah.
because it is so sparse, or
Yeah.
it can seem so sparse, and much of the action is implied. But
Yeah.
there's also, like, if anyone wants to, on the original crowdfund page, there's also the original storyboards for the film, and like there was just Kyle just did an interview for a group called Keep Alberta Rolling, and he talks about kind of how meticulously planned out their shoot was. So they shot it in 7 days at his parents' house, and his parents still live there.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
and yeah,
yeah.
so it's his childhood home, and he shot it in 7 days, or the team shot it in 7 days. And he mentions in that interview how like they had all the shots like planned out, and they even had contingency plans of like, okay, here's what we're gonna do if like one or both of the kids are
Sure. Yeah.
sick,
Yeah.
so
Particular.
this is how we'll rearrange the shot order so that exactly, so it was very, very strictly planned out. So then when he reached out and asked if I could get feedback, I was like, yeah, sure, like I'll take a look at like what it looks like first.
Yeah.
And he had like a list of speaking to like how meticulous he is. He had like instructions on how to shoot it, or instructions on how to review it for me. It was like, watch it in the dark by yourself,
Sure. Okay.
turn your phone off, so that you're not distracted. Try not to pause it, just try and immerse yourself as
So
much
that's
as
almost
possible.
notes for crew to watch too, right? Which I mean,
Yeah,
in a way you were, but that is much better than you're feeding the cat, you go off to the fridge,
right.
there's other things you could be doing, right? Or get distracted by. That's excellent. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
sounds like and this is Kyle. This is as far as the shot list and how to watch it, that sort of thing.
Yes. So the how to watch it, that was the instructions he gave me. Yeah.
Very good. No.
And so then I watched it, and I mean, I could really, like, the film works very well for me, at least, and I could really feel this sense of dread in the whole thing that does not let up.
Yeah.
And like, even thinking back to that was impressive. And I mean, I won't spoil anything. There is one scene in there where I like did literally have my head in my hands.
Okay.
And I would also say how like there was also another scene in there that I think like had kind of a hallucinogenic effect almost, where like it kind of felt like the room was pulsing. So after I watched it, I got back to him. I'm like, yeah, I think this is good, but gave him like an email worth of feedback. as to just my general thoughts. And then we had a phone call, and that was the first time that we talked, where we kind of went over, and he asked me questions about different parts, what I thought about different things. And so then within about a week, based on the feedback, he had recut it.
Holy
And
cow,
then,
okay.
yeah. And then he sent me the new copy, and then we did that process again, with like written and verbal feedback. And then he sent me a third copy, and then I honestly kind of got like busy with life, and just like it, like I didn't get back to him, and I've even told him now, I'm like, I feel bad about that. He's like, really, don't worry about it. It was fine. Because about a month later, I think I messaged him and was like, oh, like damn it, like I was supposed to get back to you, and do you still want me to like give you feedback on? I'm sure you have a new edit now. He's like, don't worry about it. Like I think you've done enough.
Okay, there
Um,
you go.
and he was having at that time, like he's told me since, like he was having a really hard time getting feedback, in like a timely way. And so then again, I kind of forgot about it again for another couple months, and just seeing occasional updates on social media. And then it was May of this past year where he posted that it was done. um and then I really can't emphasize, and like I can't emphasize enough to people when I talk about this, that like this was really intended as a film that was going to be played in a community hall for like friends and family and supporters.
Yep.
Like he's talked about how it was really a challenge to himself to prove to his friends and family that he could make a feature-length film. And also because he was it was COVID, and so he was stuck inside, and he'd always thought about making a feature film, and he's like, well, this is my time to try. Right.
Well,
um
that's what I was going to ask you was, I mean, did he have, was the production, for lack of a better word, halted or altered because of COVID-19, and then not being able to get together, or?
I don't think so. And I think it was helped by the fact that like there were not, like there was really three people shooting it
Yeah.
there. And I think at most, I mean, there were four actors, the two kids and the two adults in the entire thing.
Yeah.
So it was also very sparse cast and crew who were on set. And I know it, like, I mean, I don't, because I wasn't part of the shoot, I don't know too much about that, but I know like it is mentioned at the beginning of the film that like all COVID-19 protocols were followed,
Oh, for sure.
because we were still in that part, of the pandemic, in summer 2021. Yeah. So then after that, even at that, early on, I was like, oh yeah, it'd be cool to do like a Metro screening at some point. So like Metro is the like, local independent community theater
Yep.
here. And he was like, yeah, maybe, you know,
Yep.
and just so that people that I talked to about it, I was like, oh yeah, I'm helping with this little local, like, local horror film,
Yeah.
so some friends could see it. So then it got, there was some interest from Fantasia, I know, and so Fantasia International Film Fest, for anyone listening, is like a, like Kyle's described it as like the con of horror. Like getting into it is like a huge deal for horror films. And so he applied to he put it into Fantasia, and it got accepted. And so we were all like, wow, like that's incredible.
And just
So,
for people that don't know, that is a Canadian festival too. That's not,
yes, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
in Con
It's
or
in
anything.
Montreal.
It's in Montreal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's in Montreal. And then so then Kyle and Evan flew to Montreal, and there was the con screening, or not con, the Fantasia screening. And I mean, they said that like the crowd was kind of stunned after, and these are horror people,
Yeah. Film people
who
too.
were
Yeah.
who would
Yeah.
go to that,
Yeah.
right? And I remember he said that like about 80% of the crowd stayed for the Q&A after, which is quite incredible.
Yeah.
And so that, and then that was also when I started to see reactions come out online, because that was that at that point that was the world premiere, so that had been the only public screening. And people were saying like, oh well, this is the scariest film I've ever seen. People are like, this movie made me cry, and I'm like, wow, like I did not expect to be seeing, like, I thought Kyle was going to make a great movie, but like I didn't expect people to be having this kind of reaction to it.
Right.
And then, I mean, it was just booked at a couple other film festivals this past summer. So it won the best feature, I believe, at Torino Horror Festival in Italy.
Okay.
And then there was one festival in Spain that it was like a hybrid film festival where you could watch them at home. And so they had there was a technical glitch where actually all the films from that festival got pirated. And
Okay.
so like in his interview, Kyle talks about like how he actually found out about this on Twitter because he saw like from this one like piracy account all the films that were now available to watch online, and Skinamarink's in the list. So then he had like a panic because he was actually working on the Shudder deal at that point.
Yeah.
And so like, I remember, this was like September, October, I think this past September, October. And like, he was very concerned, just totally justifiably, that like Shudder was going to back out of the deal
Yeah.
because of piracy, right? Like it's really devastating for an independent filmmaker. And so
especially when
then,
it's on the rise too, right?
oh, I know. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And so then, like I know, yeah, and actually, I think it was around that time that I met him in person. So like it was only like this October, November where I like met him in person. And so, so and so he was saying that like, Shudder contacted him and they were like, "Don't worry, like we're gonna support the film. This is still on."
Yep.
And then what happened was like I think the piracy was unfortunate for sure, but like it definitely caused the film to like there was momentum online because of it.
Sure.
And I think it was also because of the type of film that it is. Like because it has this cursed videotape kind of feel. People are like, well, there's these reactions that are coming out of people saying this is the scariest film we've seen. And then at the same time, people are like, well, where can I watch it? And they're like, well, you can't watch it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Well, that layer of somebody knowing they're watching it illegally and not at a screening.
Exactly. Yeah.
Adds that, almost that natural, like you say, that natural people talking about it, even though they're not supposed to be seeing it. Right.
Right. Yeah. And then it was probably around October and so, yeah, it's like slowly taking off online and we see more and more people talking about it. And then it was like October maybe where it went viral on TikTok. Like there was a few TikTok and YouTube influencers who made videos about how scary it was. And, those were getting like hundreds of thousands or millions of views. And yeah, and then we're starting to see it increase even more online, and we're like, what is going on? Like,
Yeah.
this is totally unexpected. And then it was like it was late November when we found out about the like AMC Shudder IFC Midnight deal. So it got the film got acquired by AMC for streaming and distribution. Including it's streaming on Shudder and with a theatrical release on IFC Midnight, which again was like absolutely beyond like anything that anybody had imagined. So that got released in this early December, and then it was just like this absolute like with a story in Variety, and then it was just like an absolute like press torrent for most of December and January up until, and then it was like skyrocketed online, and there's interviews in like major film publications.
It goes more illegal downloads and it shows up on other things, right, when it's not supposed to, but hey.
Yeah, and then the week before it came out, like the press embargo lifted around just after New Year's.
Yep.
And then the reviews are coming in, and like the majority of the initial reviews from like these major publications were all positive. And so again, it was there were so many different points where it was like it's just like, wow, like what's gonna happen tomorrow? I was like, oh, is it maybe it'll get reviewed in the New York Times, and then it gets reviewed in the New York Times and it's a critic's pick. And then what was it? I mean, another one that stuck out to me was like it got reviewed in Sight and Sound, and Sight and Sound called it, and this was like maybe a month or two after Sight and Sound released their greatest films of the decade list, or greatest films of all time, their once a decade list.
Yep.
And and their reviewer called it like amongst the most, it was like one of the most significant horror films of the lockdown era. And so, it's just like, just mind-blowing stuff. And
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so it's been like a really fun kind of once in a lifetime ride to have been a part of, to like see this film take off like this. Yeah, I mean, it's just been, I'm really like flattered and kind of honored that I've been able to have, I feel like I made like I had like a small part to play. Yep. In the whole thing, but it's been a ton of fun to have just been part of this, like what's turned into kind of this internet phenomenon. I mean, it's still going. Like it was just trending again on Twitter earlier this week. Like, and this is 6 weeks after the theatrical release. Yeah.
So, I mean, let me ask, I mean, it's really easy in hindsight to go, would you invest in, Blair Witch or, Steven Spielberg's doing a dinosaur movie? Well, of course we can, in hindsight, we can go, yeah, everybody would have invested in that. So what is it that made you, and again, I don't want to get into the amount kind of thing, but like, what was that of this particular pitch, maybe it's cosmeticulousness or whatever that made you go, yeah, I want to contribute some of your own money, to regard, even if it is just a community hall film once, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was just the premise, like I thought was great, combined with the style of his demo reel from his Bite-Sized Nightmare. Okay. And and I was just like, this looks really cool. And I mean, it's also a local horror film, you don't get that very often. So there's a uniqueness to that. Yeah, I mean, that's really all I can I feel like, my intuition, I guess, served me well there. Yeah.
So, I mean, and again, this is slightly humorous, but I mean, you were promised at the end of the day, a VHS and a t-shirt or some credit. And that's when, if it made its money back. Now that it's looking like, well, let's face it, it's into the six figures and it's into the millions.
Yeah.
Is there a recompense now for some of the other producers that were on board? Like, you know what I mean? Like once it hits, okay.
I can't talk too much about that, but
you're not just left holding the t-shirt waiting for the VHS, right?
Well, I'm really just like excited to, have been part of the whole experience. Like that's really, that's
sure. Yeah. Well, and like anything else, you're on a ground floor with a production company, B, a producer, actors and stuff. Obviously anything they're using or doing moving forward.
Yeah. And even with that, like I mean, yeah, like I never, people have been talking to me about, people have been saying like, oh, you're a producer now. I'm like, I don't really feel like a producer, I just like was asked to help on like a friend of a friend's film. Like, I don't know. I don't think I did anything.
It's not quite Jonnn Peters. Jonnn Peters.
Yeah, like
for the giant spider.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I don't think I did anything that special other than just, supporting, like, good-heartedly, like supporting something that I really believed in. And that I thought was going to be great. So that's what, like, I mean, one great thing about this has been like, seeing young creators on social media saying, I can do my thing. Like, I can make my thing and it can be a success. So it's really interesting to me to think about, what kind of, whether people like the film or don't. And it's been incredibly divisive, like maybe the most divisive film I've ever seen,
sure.
Like in terms of the reactions. But whether you like it or not, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see kind of what other, creations come because Skinamarink succeeded.
Oh yeah, and be it from the Skinamarink team or offshoots of it, or people that are just inspired by the movie and then go, I got something I can do, right? If they see that. So I mean, you mentioned it being divisive. I probably, well, certainly this year I caught it once it was, as we say, ascending kind of thing. And I mean, I don't turn off movies and I don't walk out of theaters. I think I've done that once in the 90s, but I could understand how people, if they're not, especially if they're not keen on the horror and they don't understand, Black Christmas and some of the tracking shots, how if you don't make it through that first 5 minutes, people think oh my God, he's just left a camera on and now they're releasing it, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Did you have any concerns with that at any part of the process, or even as you're watching it going, man, I don't know if, nothing to do with the product. I just don't think the audiences are going to pick this up, kind of thing. Was that ever a concern at all?
I mean, it didn't. So at least like I have thought about this now in the, kind of looking back at the process that I was part of.
Yep.
And, so the original cut of the film was about 25 minutes longer.
Okay.
So, it's funny to me now that, so there's been such an argument about the length.
When it's 100 minutes. Yeah. It's not.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. And so the original cut was over 2 hours. I think that it's I do. Let me see. What am I trying to say here? I had a thought and I lost it.
Just with the pace cuts.
Yeah. I do wonder, if I think the reason I didn't, that wasn't never a big deal for me was one piece of feedback I remember giving Kyle was there were certainly points where it's really driving anticipation and creating this sense of dread, and then there were a few points where it kind of let off a little bit. Yep. And so I remember thinking about it well, what's the difference of those parts where you're anticipating versus those parts where you're waiting? And to me, what it was and the only thing I could really think of in terms of feedback was that if you lose track of where the kids are, I think that, to me, that's maybe the difference. Sure. Because the kids are the main characters. If you kind of know where they are in relation to the shot, that's where you're kind of anticipating something to happen. Because it's such a dreamlike film, it's very easy to project yourself into their positions.
Yes.
If you lose track of their positions, then it can become kind of waiting to see what's going to happen, and then the tension can drop a little bit. So I don't know, that's really the only thing I can think of. But I think the reason the length was never an issue for me, at least, was the pacing, was because I really was in this kind of, and even, so when I saw it at the premiere in Edmonton on January 13th, that was the third time I'd seen it. Although, what was interesting was that was the first time I'd seen the final cut. So I was seeing the final cut with everybody else, even though I'd seen kind of these two early cuts 16 months before. Right. And it's honestly it is a very weird experience now to have been, it was this movie that I watched 16 months ago by myself in my place. And the only person I had to talk to about it was Kyle. Right. Now it's this movie that's been seen all over the world, right? So that is a very surreal experience.
And you're watching it with a community at the premiere.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, exactly. Seeing it in and the Edmonton premiere was sold out. Seeing it in a theater surrounded by people I know in Edmonton. So yeah, I think that's why it worked well. It worked so well for me. Sorry. Going back to that point about when I saw the final cut in the theater, I was still tense the entire time. And I, we had an after party afterwards, and then after I went home, I was still tense that night, and I was honestly a little unsettled going to bed, even though I'd seen the film before. So for me, it works incredibly well, and I think that's why I didn't the length was never an issue for me.
No. So I mean, again, these things, these creative endeavors, whether they're successful or not, but certainly when they get this kind of level of success, it leads to other things. And it doesn't mean it's Skinamarink too, but obviously I would imagine Kyle and producers have some ideas of what they want to do next, whether it's together or separate. Yeah. And I imagine same thing, not that you're looking, I could say it's not Hollywood producing, but if you're looking for this type of thing again, obviously, what to look for as far as keeping things on your radar and what doesn't stay on your radar.
Yeah, I'm just, I'd just be interested in kind of like keeping an eye out for other things that, that I think look like they're going to be a great project. And like people have asked me that question about like, how did you know? And it's like, it was just this feeling. And so I would tell people, support local art and local artists that, if you're passionate about their work, support it. And, you don't know if it could turn into this kind of wild ride.
Oh yeah, like, and that's exactly what this is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It's a wild ride, and then in the same way, well, really, it isn't. It's the same thing that's been for the last 2 years. It's just straight up kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you don't know what it could turn into, or who it will influence. Yeah.
There we go. Well, no, I think that's it. Certainly for me. Thanks for letting me chat with
sure.
super Hollywood producer.
Oh
Jonnn
yeah, no, not at all. No.
No,
I actually like. Have you seen it yet?
Yeah, I don't want to cop to seeing it legally online, but that's where I see most of my stuff. I'm always amazed what shows up and how fast, because like, and these are good quality. This isn't Seinfeld bootlegging videos from the 80s and the 90s, but like, even not a comparison, but like Kevin Smith was touring his last one around. Well, I think it's Clerks 3, which means the only copy is the one he's got. Right, he's going movie to movie theater, and then he does his Q&A. Well, after the third screening, there's one up, and you go, but
I know
the owner was in the room when you guys, clearly pirated this.
Yeah,
but hey, we're so far north.
Yeah, and I mean, it really, like, an interesting part of it was that it really touched, especially on Reddit. Like Kyle talks a lot about how like the movie so often comes back to Reddit, because the trailer was discovered on Reddit. He was posting on Reddit, back when he was doing Bite-Sized Nightmares. And I mean, so Reddit, there was a huge discussion on Reddit after it was pirated about, you're pirate. It was, the takes were kind of, you're pirating a film of like a local, independent filmmaker who's really trying to like, break in and make a living doing this, versus like, the piracy is, helping propel the film, and we're doing him a
care.
Right. Yeah. And so there was a huge discussion over that, because this was like, such a small production. And I mean, yeah, it was an interesting discussion. Like, it was, I mean, again, it was unfortunate that it was pirated, but it did add momentum, to it. Like I would say, like, it's not to condone piracy at all, because I think it does hurt small independent filmmakers. Like
it absolutely does. It certainly can.
Yeah, it certainly can. And but I mean, it would just, it wouldn't be true to say that it didn't add to the momentum online.
Well, I just think in this case, again, the particular, I mean, again, somewhat that comes with a low budget or a smaller budget film, but the fact that you're dealing with this, VHS 80s milieu, where there is no warning for piracy other than that big FBI thing before the tapes that used to play. And, it kind of helps the zeitgeist of the movie, in a positive way, as opposed to, I'm not making my 10 grand back because everybody's seen it already.
Yeah. And with that, like, I think there are so many factors as to like why, that this was a success. Like, it's very, I was just talking to Kyle the other day about how like, it's a very memeable movie. Like there's so many aspects that can be made into memes, and like, we've all been loving the memes and the fan art. It's been fantastic to see all of that. And like a lot of the dialogue, because it's like short little bits, the kind of, the like, in this house from the trailer, come upstairs, like there's these short bits that like are really perfect for Twitter or TikTok or Instagram, like all of the social media sites. So in a lot of ways it is a very like, it is a like a very like internet ready film.
Yeah, absolutely. And very much so. That's, I mean, and Kyle cited the influences of his filmmaking influences. And
Right.
I talked about Black Christmas there a little bit. That was my first 5 minutes of this going, oh, here we go. I get what he's doing. And then the minute you said, yeah, the sound bites were the small clippy type of businesses. To me, that was just echoes of David Lynch all the way through.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a great, much like Lynch doing "This Is the Girl," and you don't even find out what that means, right? It's very similar.
Yeah.
And so
I don't know if you saw this online, but so Kyle did an event in LA a few weeks back. He got invited to it was a screening at the Ace Hotel, and a one-on-one Q&A that he did with Patton Oswalt. So that was again super cool experience. And David Lynch's team were there at the screening, and they gave him a surprise box gift, which included a signed copy of Eraserhead. So this was just stuff that we could not have even believed would happen.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
And I mean, apparently David Lynch does I think Kyle was told at the time that he hadn't seen the movie yet, but he did have a screener. So we hope
to Hollywood. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, it's amazing.
No, again, we're slowly running out of our allotted.
Yeah, for sure.
But, no, thanks for letting me chat it up with Skinamarink and help spread the word.
Course.
If people haven't seen it,
yeah.
Hopefully they'll come to Mile Zero here for reals and not just online.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, man.
You're welcome. Yeah, and I mean, I think the next couple of steps are, it's definitely, there's international distribution happening now.
Oh yeah.
It just opened in Poland. I think it was 73 screens in Poland.
Crazy.
Last weekend. I know. Yeah, it was. Yeah, and then
each of those, for people that don't realize, it's its own market and its own deal, right? I mean, your Poland deal will be different than your Czechoslovakia, and everything that comes with different markets and different languages.
Yeah, and it's opening in Mexico in March. Yeah. So it's just gonna I don't know. It could just keep going.
Skinamarink
for at least the foreseeable future. Yeah.
So, I mean, and literally with your hat on, do you have any other not ideas, but projects that you are looking at producing, or is it just kind of see what comes across the desk?
Yeah, just kind of seeing what comes across the desk, seeing what happens next, what I find interesting. I am kind of at my core, interested in more experimental, weird stuff that pushes boundaries. So I love the fact that I'm very proud to be on the film in even a small way, and yeah, I mean, we'll just see where that goes.
Well, no, absolutely, and I was gonna say it's not Jaws 5, but it's also not Sharknado. This is certainly something that's much more artistic and directed, right?
Yeah,
very well, and everything that comes with having a concept and people that are passionate about it.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Jonnn.
You're welcome.
Have a great day, man.
You too. Yeah. And hope to talk to you. We should actually catch up soon sometime.
Yeah. Let's make it more than every 15 years or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Later, man.